As they say in the old days, it's the Tonight Show. If anyone remembers who that is, all my old ghosts are coming to haunt me. It's the Tonight Show. All right, I'm gonna give it a few seconds. Ruvain, well, Leah, one of the Sackets are there. Good to see you. Good, not, I mean, it would be nice to see you, but at least I see your name in neon lights. Okay. Hi, Ruvain. Oh, Ruvain, where's the tie? No jacket. Uh-oh.
Miskat Nadaris.
Mashiach, Ruvain, Mashiach has come. Okay. Anyway, here we are. Another day into the march in COVID. 87 days, 88 days, who knows how many days already. At any rate, I see we got some old customers back. Good to see everyone. So I wanted to, a lot of things going on in the world, and, the whole, I guess most people just look at it as a nuisance. The George Floyd episode, Nebuch, the unfortunate episode with someone being killed, and the riots, and the looting. And for most of us, I would imagine that a reaction is, okay, this is what it is. We got to live. It's a nuisance. It affects us. It slows things down. It affected the economy. It knows it's going to affect the police. But for people who are thinking Jews and claim to be the Am HaNivchar, we have to figure out what's the message. I mean, is it just to be nice to minorities? Is that all that we're supposed to learn from it? And it's sort of this is sort of a stream of consciousness. So you'll forgive me. Hopefully, it'll come out clearly. You see the expressions of, in the sense of inferiority or discrimination and not being validated and the like. And then you see the expressions of, the accusations of white privilege and the imagery, even the imagery itself, the imagery of, these poor, indigent, desperate looters, in a contrast to these glorious stores. I mean, some neighborhoods weren't so glorious, but the imagery from, Los Angeles and Manhattan, these are the finest stores, the epitome of privilege, Gucci and Rolex and whatnot. And is it just, they were just an expression of jealousy? Is it just an expression of frustration? And therefore they want to take it out on the fat cats and the rich ones and the privileged. What do we make from all this? We just, say, bunch of thugs. And, we can relate to the frustration of those who are discriminated against for sure, but that doesn't give license to the thugs. But what's the message for us? What are we supposed to walk away with? God is speaking to us. And it can't be that all this wanton violence and the repercussions for a country that so many thousands and millions of Jews live in, that's just, okay, it's just another nuisance we have to live through. And then I started, this is a little, stream of consciousness, I admit it. And then we have to ask ourselves, are we racist? How do we grow up? What was our attitude towards minorities, and especially blacks and African Americans? I wouldn't use the word, even though when we grew up, it was a common word, how to refer to them. But what is that? Are we racist? Are we not racist? I mean, and one of the things that come to my mind that sort of haunts me a little bit in light of what's going on is, the claim that, listen, this minority is descendants of Chum, allegedly. And Chum is cursed. That's going to be Eved Lamai. That's a mentality, and that's what it is. And I've heard that, we've heard that many times. And that expression, that sort of the doomed, the cursed. And like someone said, they're cursed, but that never stopped a woman who's cursed from taking an epidural and trying to do whatever she can to avoid it. It never stopped the person who's working and say, well, I'm cursed, so I might as well just, take a hammer and knock away at rocks, the hardest work. I mean, you try to alleviate it. And just because someone's cursed, it doesn't mean you go around and beating up snakes. It doesn't mean that it's just, okay, that's what it is, they're cursed. And it's obviously, it's some sort of a curse. So I'll explain to you what I think it is. But that doesn't mean that it's justified. It doesn't mean that it's the right thing. It doesn't mean that it's a value. It's not a reality, but it's something that has to be overcome. It's part of God's master plan. So what is the plan? So it came to me. I was thinking a lot about this, and I was flipping through and remembering. There's a beautiful piece. I want to share with you something from Rav Shimshon Hirsch, who's one of my greatest heroes in Jewish literature and thought. I think I always say it should be required reading. I wish they would have taught us that when I was a kid, and Chumash and his attitude and his understanding of Chumash is just so eye-opening. And to be able to learn Chumash without just assuming that, assumptions, but to see the verse and really analyze it and draw the message from the pasuk itself. And Rav Shimshon was just one of the people, if I could have an audience with, I would love to see who that man is, although I don't, maybe we'd have to speak German or Yiddish. I don't know if he spoke Yiddish. At any rate, so, this notion that, this nation, whoever descends from Canaan or Ham and Africa, whatever, it's associated with, is some sort of a curse, is really based on a pasuk. It says, Eved Avodim. It says in the pasuk that they will be Eved Avodim. And V'hiknan Eved Lamai. Let me read the pasuk to you. Let me open it up. And it sounds like they were indeed cursed. So that's it. So we just write them off. They're cursed people. So he says Vayayma Oru. So Noach said, first of all, God didn't say it. Noach said it. He says, Oru Knan Eved Avodim Yelechu. Eved Avodim Yelechu. And then it says, you have to Elkim L'Yekves. No, Vayayma Bar Hashem L'Keshem V'hiknan Eved Lamai being Evedim. So what does it mean, Eved Avodim? So Rav Shimshon Hirsch says, what does Eved Avodim mean? Most people think Eved Avodim means like the mother of all Avodim, the Eved of all Avodim, Eved, a real Eved. So he says, it doesn't mean that. It means to be an Eved to Avodim, just like it says Elokei Elokim. Hashem is the God of all gods in a sense, right? He's over them. So Eved is to Avodim. So what does that mean? What does it mean Eved Avodim? So I'm going to read to you what he says, and I'm going to try to share with you my feelings and hopefully, get the point across. So basically, Rav Shimshon Hirsch goes through a long thesis, and it's worthwhile seeing it in the end of Noach, with the story of Shem, Cham, and Yafes. He says, really, these three children represent the seeds of history of humanity. That's really what it is. And it's not like, someone is specifically cursed, but what was going on in these psukim is a deeper understanding of the forces within a human individual that find its expression not only in the individual, but in in a people, because we're comprised of individuals, but the larger entity, the larger nation is an expression of the individual forces that we operate with. He said there are basically three forces that we have to deal with, and that Shem is the intellect, and Yefes is beauty, which is the heart and the spirit, and beauty and sentiment and feeling. That's Yefes, Lashon of Yafa. And Cham, which is sensuality. And there are these three forces operating within an individual. We have to fight the forces of sensuality that say we should just eat each other alive. And then there's, the pure intellect, which directs us how to act, but without emotion, it's meaningless. And we have to affect, and we have to relate to others with emotion. We have to learn how to channel a sensuality to serve refinement and beauty. But of course, expressing Shem, the idea to be able to identify and have a clear direction, what we're doing with this and the purpose of our physical being and our emotional self to find expression. And when those three operate together, you have a beautiful world. And that's when, that's what it's all about. But what was going on in this moment wasn't a curse per se. It was an expression by Noach of understanding the different forces that operate in the world, and there will be nations inevitably. Some will express the Cham, the sensuality, more than others. Some will express the Yafa, the beauty, the sentiment, feeling, art, music, like Greece. And then there's, of course, the Shem, the Semites, the Shem, which represents that ability to see with clarity and identify our mission, our purpose, rule, law, ethics, and morals, and the like. But all three ultimately have to operate together. And that's really what it's all about. So he says, I'm going to read you two paragraphs from him, and I'm going to hopefully get the point that I want to get across. So he says like this, I'm going to read two paragraphs. He says, the greatest ado in the world has been made by Cham, that sensuality, worldliness, which harnesses all that belongs to spirit and mind to the chariots of fame, and only allows intellect to be used or valued as far as it serves as a means of furthering the material side of life. Nations that conquer, plunder, and enjoy. Nations pass across the stage who represent hardly anything but raw force, sensuality, and bestiality. And then he goes on, he says, when, I'm skipping a bunch because we don't have time, and this is not a full-fledged drasha, only a mini drasha, but he says like this, he says, Oro Kanan, and he explains what he means. He wasn't cursing him, he wasn't foisting a curse on him. You're doomed for eternity, and you're inferior, and you'll never get out of your bondage. That's not what he was saying. He was describing, as we'll soon see, I read his words, that when you live directed by your sensuality, that's where avdus, the concept of slavery, can come about. It was the invention, those who represented and primarily expressed sensuality without a sense of right and wrong, without a sense of feeling and sentiment, that breeds eved to avodim. This is what he reads. I'm going to read it to you. Hopefully, I'll get it across, give you something to think about. He sees Oruknan. Noach sees that coarseness and ruthless, glowing sensuality does not bear the seed of the future blossoming of mankind within it. He sees that the nations who give themselves up to sensuality and whose character, the lower nature of man, remains the prevailing trait, instead of becoming free on their own, free, independent, and mighty, they sink down to avodim, to slaves. More, he sees centuries in which the conception of human beings having the right to freedom is lost. Canaan is eved avodim, but the ones he's eved to are also avodim. And he makes a very salient point. Only nations who are themselves enslaved have enslaved others. He who sets out to be a world conqueror, to force other nations to obey his will, must first have abased his own people to act slavishly as the blind instruments of his lust for power and mastery. From Cham's descendants, they weren't doomed to it. They created avdus because Cham was those Nimrod, Mitzrayim, those nations that represented our own personal needs is everything, is supernal. That's what is primary, and everyone else has to be subservient. So I get what I want and my needs. And he says like this. He says, he who sets out to be a world conqueror to force other nations to obey his will must first have abused his own people to act slavishly as the blind instruments of his lust for power and mastery. From Cham's descendants, tyrants. They weren't first of them. They were the first ones to be tyrants. Mighty despots and hunters of men went forth. Not freedom. Slavery is begotten by passion. Freedom, cheres, only lives in law, only blossoms there where untouchably above all a law of morals rules. He remains free who learns to obey the law of morals. Sensuous nations are the breeding places of slavery. Cham begets avodim, where sensuality is at its height, as in Canaan, they sink to becoming evet avodim. So he's describing a reality in history. The nations that gave primacy to their own satisfaction, their own gratification, and that's what was primary, they created a world where they were able to enslave others, because those who were enslaved to their own sensuality resorted to enslaving others so they can achieve what they wanted to achieve. So it's not a curse per se, it's an observation that these nations unleashed will create a despots and tyrants who will perforce their representation of sensuality in its worst, will enslave others to them. So it's not the pshat that they're cursed. It's not that it's a cursed nation. And you know, this imagery sort of, again, I'm not blaming, but you know, the white privilege and the underprivileged and those who are left out and who are, you know, labeled forever enslaved. But it only breeds in a world where, you know, you can couch sensuality in sophistication and ideals and beauty and art, But at the bottom, at the end of the day, it's sensuality. It's my rights and what I need, and subjecting others who are underprivileged to not be getting what they need because we place primacy on what our needs are, and we don't tend to, with sensitivity, to elevate those who need to be elevated. So again, this is not a political commentary, but it's just conveying to you that there's no such thing, according to Rav Hirsch, as a curse that was placed on any given nation. It was an observation that when sensuality and the goal for my gratification at all costs, that breeds a world where others become enslaved to you. You can use different labels for it, and it could be communism, it could be capitalism, it could be whatever it is that you couch your sophistication of getting your goals. But at the end of the day, it's about me, and it's about accomplishing and gratifying myself and making myself comfortable. That oftentimes, because that's the goal, that we're avadim, and we end up making avadim to avadim, and we're the ones who create a society where people become avadim l'avadim, and that's really what it means. Okay, so a bit of a esoteric idea, but something to think about. And and there's I think that's the message for us, that we have to reevaluate how what's our primary drive in life, and what is really the goal of our nation, and what do we have to represent to the world. It's not a question of privilege, it's a question of responsibility. We're not privileged, but we're responsible. We're an Am HaNivchar, we're chosen to be responsible. And of course, responsibility comes with certain joy and accomplishments and satisfaction in that role, which you may call privilege, but it's not privilege per se, it's responsibility. Because when we live with a sense of Shem, Baruch Hashem Elokei Shem, then the world will become a better place. So we have to look at the events of the world and put it into proper context in the world history that began a long time ago. And it seems to be evolving. And you have to see history as an expression of the Ratzon Hashem. And there is a tension that's being created, a desire to create some sort of a evenness between values, morals, religion, rights, and privilege, and really define it in the right way so you get a perfect balance and bring Humpty Dumpty back together again, because the world came apart after the Noach, Shem, Chava, and Yafes, or three pieces of Humpty Dumpty that have to come together and integrate and work and operate together. Something to think about.